Hi kids, today we're going to be reading Doña Flor by Pat Mora, illustrated by Raúl Colón. A tall tale about a giant woman with a great big heart. Every winter morning, when the sun opened one eye, Doña Flor grabbed a handful of snow from the top of a nearby mountain. Brrr, she said, rubbing the snow on her face to wake up. Long, long ago, when Flor was a baby, her mother sang to her in a voice sweet as river music. When Flor's mother sang to her corn plants, they grew tall as trees. And when she sang to her baby, her sweet flower, well, Flor grew and grew too. Some children laughed at her because she was different. Mira, look, Bigfoot, they called when she walked by. Flor talks funny, they whispered, because Flor spoke to butterflies and grasshoppers. She spoke every language, even Rattler. But soon, Flor's friends and neighbors asked her for help. Children late for school asked, Por favor, Flor, could you give us a ride? She took just one of her giant steps and was at the school door. Of course, the escuela shook and the windows rattled. When Flor finally stopped growing, she built her own house, una casa big as a mountain and open as a canyon. She scooped a handful of dirt and made herself a valley for mixing clay, straw, and water. She added some estrellas, the stars made the adobe shine. When she worked, Flor sang, and birds came and built nests in her hair. Flor wanted everyone to feel at home in her house. Mi casa es su casa, she said to people, animals, and plants, so they knew they were always welcomed. Everyone called her Doña Flor because they respected her. No one needed an alarm clock in Doña Flor's pueblo. When her hands, white as plates, started patting tortillas, everyone in the village woke up, so her neighbors would have plenty to eat. She stacked her tortillas on the huge rock table in front of her house. Flor's tortillas were the biggest, bestest tortillas in the whole wide world. People used the extra ones as roofs. The house smelled corn good when the sun was hot. In the summer, the children floated around the pond on the tortilla rafts. One warm spring day, while a family of lizards swept her house, Doña Flor brought out her stacks of fresh tortillas. Nobody came. Thought Flor. She started knocking on doors and calling to her neighbors. ¿Qué pasa? What's the matter? She asked, bending down to peer into their small doors to see where they were hiding. El Puma, they whispered. The children have heard a huge mountain lion circling the village. Listen. Flor listened, and sure enough, she heard a terrible roar. Doña Flor and her animal friends went out looking for the huge gato, but they couldn't find it. That night, she carried her tired friends, the coyotes and rabbits, back home. But just as she started to tuck them in and read them a good night story, they all heard roar. Where is that cat? Asked Flor, with the scared animals who were shaking and shivering under their sheets. She gave each a giant kiss. Smack! The sound echoed and woke the grumpy wind, who stormed up and down the hills, a grumbling and a growling. That night, the wind got so angry that he blew the trees and houses first to the left and then to the right, again to the left and then to the right. Now, Doña Flor liked her sleep, so she wasn't smiling. She heard the wind spinning round and round the village. Together, the wind and the giant cat roared all night, and nobody got much sleep. As the sun rose, Flor's neighbors, shaking at the commotion, peered out their windows. Tired-looking Flor was giving the world a big hug to quiet him down. Then she started her morning chores. Doña Flor had work to do, but first she looked around the village. Where were her neighbors? Then she heard roar, roar. Flor stumped off to find the puma that was bothering her amigos. Exhausted by the afternoon, Doña Flor still hadn't found that cat. So she sat outside the library for a rest. She was too big to fit inside, so she just reached in the window for books. You see, Flor was probably the fastest reader ever. Why, she could read the whole encyclopedia in 5 minutes. She liked to sit in the shade and read stories and poems, nice and slow, to the children and animals that climb all over her soft body. Today, she called and called, and finally the children came, but they were scared. What can I do to cheer my friends up? Wondered Flor as she saw their frightened faces. She thought and thought. Now Flor knew that her village needed un río, a river. So to make her neighbors happy, Doña Flor scratched a new riverbed with her thumb. When the water trickled down the stones for the first time, Flor called out, "Just listen to that! Isn't that the prettiest sound you ever heard?" She smiled, and her smile was about as big as her tortillas. But today her neighbors could barely smile back. They were too worried about the mountain lion, and sure enough, suddenly there was a terrible roar, roar. That's it, thought Doña Flor, and again she stumped off to look for the giant puma, but she still couldn't find him. She went home to think and work in her garden. It was like a small forest on the edge of the pueblo, a tangle of poppies, morning glories, roses, lucius, tomatoes, and chiles. Whatever she planted grew so fast, you could hear the roots spreading at night. Her neighbors used the sunflowers as bright yellow umbrellas. She gave the school band her hollyhocks to use as trumpets. The music smelled like spring. My plants grow that big because I sing to them like my mother did, Doña Flor told the children when they came 3 at a time to carry home an ear of corn. But today the children ran home when they heard roar. The sound rattled all the plates in the pueblo. Flor's neighbors' teeth started rattling too. Where is that big monster gato? Doña Flor wondered. The smell of roses helped Flor think, so she went inside and took a long, hot bubble bath. Everybody knew Doña Flor was thinking when bubbles that smelled like roses began to rise from her chimney. I know, thought Flor. I'll go to my animal friends for help. She stumped off again and she started asking because, remember, she spoke every language, even Rattler. Go quietly to the tallest mesa, said the deer. Vaya silenciosamente a la mesa más alta, hissed the snake. Go quietly to the tallest mesa, whispered the rabbits. Knowing that animals are mighty smart, Doña Flor followed their advice. She walked very, very softly up to the tallest mesa. She looked around carefully for the giant cat. Then, right near her, she heard roar, roar. Flor jumped so high she bumped into the sun and gave him a black eye. Flor looked around. All she saw was the back of a cute little puma. She watched him very quietly. Doña Flor began to tiptoe toward the puma when all of a sudden he roared into a long hollow log. The sound became a huge roar that echoed down into the valley. Now the little puma thought the loud noise was so funny that he rolled on his back and started laughing and laughing until he saw big Doña Flor. Aha, thought Flor. Are you the chico who's causing all that trouble? She asked. The little puma tried to look very fierce. His eyes sizzled with angry sparks. He opened his mouth wide and his teeth glinted. He roared his meanest roar. Roar! He growled, but without the log, the growl wasn't really very fierce. Doña Flor just smiled at that brave cat and said, Why, you're just a kitten to me, Pumito. And she bent down and scratched that puma behind the ears. And she whispered to him in cat talk until that cat began to purr and purr. Pumito began to lick Flor's face with his wet tongue. Suddenly, Flor heard a new noise. Doña Flor, ¿dónde estás? Where are you? Called her worried neighbors. Even though they were frightened, they had all come holding hands looking for her. Meet my new amigo, said Doña Flor, smiling at her thoughtful neighbors. That evening, Flor plucked a star the way she always did and plunked it on the tallest tree so her friends in the pueblo could find their way home. She plucked una estrella to put above the door too. Even the stars could hear Doña Flor humming. Flor like a fresh bed, so she reached up and filled her arms with clouds, smelling of flowery breezes. She shaped the clouds into a soft, deep bed and into hills of puffy pillows. Said Flor as she snuggled in the clouds. Tonight, I'm very tired after my adventure with the giant cat. Right, Pumito? Chuckled Doña Flor. All the animals snuggled down with her, and Pumito stretched out over her big toes. And that, children, is the end of the story. I'll see you next time. Take care. Bye.